question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not gonna use the mic. That's for the superintendent. Yeah, so obviously, little bit of the same emotions. It is really exciting to be here today and look at everybody and say, wow. 2 years, but we're here. And look around the room and been almost 2 decades. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to talk about a little bit about where we are and where we're going. And it's also amazing to be here with Dr. Cruz, and I'm just going to say, brother Cesar, who has been in contact with us for a couple of weeks, in and out, researching our district, asking the great questions, asking our people, getting excited about our work. And that speaks volume about you. I want to thank you on behalf of our district and our kids for being here today. Let's put our hands together. I also want to thank our coaches, our volunteers, because they were the ones who were here yesterday. I don't know how late. Cleaning this up and making it look beautiful and nice for all of us. So let's give it up. And last but not least, I want to thank every single one of you for taking a Saturday to be here today, because this work matters. It is important. And I was kind of thinking about this last night or this morning, whatever you want. Yeah, maybe 2 a.m. This is something that some of us probably started thinking a long time ago about this quote. And this is why we decided to take on the equity work, because one day we woke up and said, we're no longer accepting the things we cannot change. Instead, we are changing the things we cannot accept. And that's what equity work is about. So let's talk about our journey real quick. I mean, since I came to this district from Portland Public Schools 15 years ago, we, as a team, we've gone through UUR, United to Understand Racism, Courageous Conversations, Race Forward, Beyond Diversity, Taking It Up, CIFI, OALA, NEP, Microaggressions, Implicit Bias, Adverse Childhood Experiences, White Fragility, White Privilege, Guilt versus Responsibility, Restorative Justice, Teaching for Social Justice, Culturally Responsive Teaching, Culture Cycle, Identity Safety, Imposter Syndrome, Worthiness Gap, Independence versus Interdependence, SEL, Affinity Groups, BARWE, Gender Diversity in pre-K through 12 settings. And today we have Cesar. That's the journey. This is what we've done. I just wanted to summarize it for you in one page. That's what I've gone through in 15 years in this district. And for some of you, it's probably an introduction. Some of you probably don't know some of these things. But for many of you, you've been here, you've done that with me. Yeah, it is true that this has been the last couple of years have been difficult. But it has not been in the absence of equity work. We have done some equity work, okay? It was during the pandemic that the Forest Grove School District and the board passed an equity policy, which was historic. It's the first time ever we've done that. Significant funding was allocated to support students and staff in the form of hiring student success coaches, math coaches, or support literacy coaches, ELD coaches. We are taking already significant steps towards the adoption and implementation of a new literacy curriculum that will benefit all students. Our district leads the way by having a representative be the co-chair of the Latino, AX, and Indigenous Student Success Plan Advisory Team at the state level. One of our own principals is the director of the Oregon Center for Educational Equity. We are also immensely proud of having a number of staff members, some of them are close to me over here, taking leadership in organizations such as OALA, CIFI, the National Equity Project, and other organizations. So all of this is affecting kids. The work we are doing is affecting. Look at that data. It was during the pandemic that our EL kids improved graduation by 22% in comparison to last year. It was during the pandemic that our migrant kids improved graduation rates by 8% in comparison to last year. And by the way, both of them were higher than the state average during this pandemic. Yeah, let's talk about other stats. Yeah, we cannot be content. We cannot be too happy. There is work to be done. We have a lot of Hispanic kids in low-level math classes. But wait a minute. We have more Hispanic kids taking AP classes at the high school than whites. Did we know that? Let's celebrate that. Let's put our hands together. We have been holding, first time ever, every month, equity sessions at the district office. We have extended our equity PD to all the migrant staff, which it has not happened like that before. We have extended our communication in the form of newsletters so that we have awareness on an ongoing basis to engage and share information with the entire district, no exceptions, all staff, or migrant, EL.
Us, you know, we represent, right? Like there's no one that even comes close to how many people we bring.
So I have been part of the team through this committee, through this district equity team, that worked with Kevin on the diversifying the workforce subcommittee. And we've been working over the last several years and some goals that we have in that are to recruit, retain, and hire a workforce that matches our student population. Our pathways for our classified folks and our community members and our students, which is what is so exciting because that's happening. And then review our current hiring practices and make sure that we're doing things that really support and retain our bypass.
And I forgot to mention, can people just raise their hands who are on our subcommittee for hiring and retention? We have people, Megan, I know it's there, Marielle, you've been on our group there. So this is a team effort and just want to make sure that we acknowledge and Austin's been a part of that as well. So as Laura talked about, right, the one thing that you know, since I've come to this district and working with this subcommittee and being a part of this, is really understanding that there are multiple avenues where we can bring and diversify our staff, right? So obviously our classified, we're going to talk about that. That's definitely a pathway that we've seen success in. Certainly community members, we've done some reach out and trying to understand that, you know, we don't need to go out of state. We don't need to, we have people in our community that could be excellent teachers and educators educators, and how do we work through that, and how do we work through the licensing and all those types of things. And then high school cohorts, and Lucy Aguilar is back there. She and Danielle Thompson are working really hard at the high school level, along with other folks. So, but I want to
And
thank.
just before you move that slide, I
please.
want to highlight that picture in the bottom corner where that's here in this room. Those are all classified staff from this district who are working on getting their teaching license. And that was like one of the most exciting moments for me, was to see all of our BIPOC bilingual staff who are in our system already. We know they work well with kids. We know we want them as teachers, and we're doing that. And I see some of them here today, so that's really exciting. So some of the ways that we're supporting pathway candidates is having affinity mentoring. So something we started last year, I believe, and then have expanded this year, is pairing up our classified staff who are working on getting to licensure with current staff of color. And so making sure that they have somebody within the system who can kind of help guide them on that pathway. And then also transforming our human resources practices, which I'm learning so much about by being part of this.
I appreciate her. Just being here in your office. But you all know that many of us worked on our subcommittee about just making sure we've got equity questions now, right? Making sure that we're having equity members on all of our hiring teams, right? So just those little things that we've been working on that and being intentional about. So here's something we want to celebrate and share about. So we have participated and were successful in 2 grow our own grants. Actually, we got into 3, but I don't populate on that. The limit was 2, but we got into 3. So, so the first one is with our Northwest Regional Educational Service District, right? And that's our diverse educator pathway. And so that's something that we've been bringing in. We created we created a future teacher position where we are bringing in folks through this pathway to teach side by side and get that kind of opportunity in our summer school migrant program. So that's been something that we're growing. I think this might be even our 3rd year that we're having folks, that we will have people this summer in that program, right? And then the other is a teacher connect. And I think the one thing that in our partnerships with other school districts and with Pacific University is understanding that there are also pathways, right? Community college level, right? People that's certainly a pathway to get in and go that route. And that's something. How many people here today are well? I won't do it next slide, so we'll talk about that. But anyway, these are our 2 grants providing scholarships as well as mentoring and other opportunities. Here we go.
All right, okay, so we right now have 17 BIPOC and bilingual classified staff, community members, or high school graduates who are paired up with mentors, as we talked about. Over the past 3 years, we've hired 6 of those classified bilingual staff into teaching positions, and we're having more in the pathway. We have 4 bilingual university students who we've been working with during the summer, who have been paired with teachers like Peggy and others, working side by side, getting that mentoring. And then our current certified staff demographics. Okay, this is where this gets really exciting to me to look at. Actually, we are pushing the dial, moving the dial as far as representation. So right now, our current certified staff demographics, we have 31% of our certified staff are BIPOC. And we have 33% of our new hires for this year. And you can compare that to, 5 years before, where it was 26%. And when you look back even 5 years before that, it was 20%. So we are starting to make that shift.
Actually, 10 years ago, it was 0% for new hires of color, because I actually have the data following them.
So we just wanted to be part of our just sharing out some really great news. And again, this is really a team effort. This has been a district effort. This has been things that our administrative team And going back to that first photo, right, about just understanding that where we've come and what we've been doing, and then to have 17 people on the pathway paired up with 17 current BIPOC certified staff as mentors, as support. And we won't go into we know the reasons why that's important. We know why this work is so important. So thank you very much for letting us kind of share that data.
Of the data they were talking about, I mean, obviously, you can see that first bar 20 years ago, 0% new hires were staff of color, and right now 33% are. And all of that is happening in this pandemic, so we should be proud of that. Fernhill has been focusing on brainstorming stuff, and finding common language, common path of action. Yo, Gail, been having great conversations about gender equity. Gender neutral mascot jazz. You might need to explain to people what I mean. Another highlight is that they started a dual language program. ELD classes for mothers of EL students. That's remarkable. Not only for their children, but everybody. Billy continues the focus on developing identity safe environments for the students and staff. Harvey Clark keeps working on that cultural and responsive teaching and identity safety. I mean, Eusebia doing great PD for EL facilitators and other staff in the district. Tom McCall keeps examining every practice and decision with equity lens. An equity lens. Focus on examining the scores, looking at EL models to better self EL students. NAMS, implicit biases centered on the issue of behavior referrals. Great PD on equity and politics in education. All of these resources, by the way, are attached to the agenda I shared with you. There are a number of presentations that you should look at. The high school did an equity retreat that was fantastic. You should hear from that as well. Cornelius, I'm not sure how many of you are there, but students, give it up for them. Setting of equity policy, going item by item. What do we have? What do we not? Where do we go? And by the way, Cesar was working on a tool for us based on our equity policy. But I'm not going to steal his thunder. He's going to share that later. And last but not least, we have a little bit from Echo Shop. Bernard, you want to talk about it?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
SEL.
Yeah, okay, SEL. So we at Echo Shaw this year really thought our focus was going to remain the whole year, making sure that our kids were okay and that they were excited about coming to school. And it's tempting to get sucked into the data, but we're really resisting for this year. This year, I keep saying it's like a gift. It's a pause. We're just rebooting, and our focus is happy kids that are lying awake at night, so excited for the next morning to come because we've got some really cool things planned for them. Next. So, for example, freaking TikTok challenges. Our 6th grade boys started making a mess in our restrooms, and I started doing what we always do. At one point, I took all the soap out of the restroom, which is gross, especially during a pandemic. I put hand sanitizer. I created a whole schedule for duties and had 4 classified folks just standing outside the restrooms to police it. And it just didn't make any sense because it just didn't make any sense. And the kids are so much smarter than we are that they just found different ways to vandalize because then it was like challenge time. So instead, we decided, how about they just don't care about this space enough. So we hired a muralist to come in worked with all of our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students. They designed these beautiful, beautiful images that the artists put together, and then the kids got to paint them. When you get the slide deck, there are these little links that show like a little video panorama. It's beautiful. And since then, we've had none of the vandalism that we had before, and they even have their soap back in there, which is good. We've also been, go ahead to the next slide. We've also been done this all the way through. Our task this year has been more about connecting fun activities with what kids are already doing. So all the way to pre-K, Cecia has this video on her phone of they were doing the letter Y, and so they were learning about a yema, the yolk from the egg, and so she's bringing in eggs, more like hands-on. She has this video, it was a highlight of my whole week. Kids just squealing because they're breaking eggs on their hands and like, it feels so gross. And kinder, they are going to do residency with slime. 1st grade right now, they're doing a really cool art residency, making calaveras where they're going home, getting imagery from home. 2nd grade did this really cool project also using different mediums. You can see we're trying to organize swimming lessons in the spring for our 3rd graders to take them to the swimming pool. We have a residency starts right Alejandro this week in music where they're doing this music thing around sound. 5th grade had mobile Omzi. They did these really cool things with iPads too. They made like claymation movies. 6th grade, Spider-Man was a thing. And so Jamie and Maddie took the Spider-Man and they created this whole unit where they actually built in watching all of the spider. I didn't know there was not one Spider-Man. I guess there's a lot of them. Yeah. And then the kids did this comparative essay where they had to write about which one was their favorite. And as a culminating activity, we sent all of our 6th graders to the movie theater to watch Spider-Man together. And then when you get this link, you have to watch this movie because we had our gender neutral mascot, Augie, amazing, who's Laura Mannon most of the time.
Don't tell the kid.
Create a movie about discrimination, and the other mascots came and the other principals came. So Rogelio's in our movie, and Summer, and Mariela, and Troy, as along with their mascots. It's a cool little video. So yeah, is that the last line? Yeah, that's what we've been doing.
We are right on time. What we wanted to illustrate with this is that the equity work didn't die. You know, the pandemic, just like I said in my email to you, the pandemic put a lot of things on hold. But it didn't hold back oppression. It didn't hold back discrimination. It didn't hold back all the injustices that are happening in society. Therefore, and consequently, it cannot hold back the equity work. And that's why our superintendent and you said, hey, hell no, we are going to continue. And we're not gonna wait until next year to do this. We're gonna do it this year. We're gonna do it when we can. So first of all, I want to appreciate the leadership of our district for being at the forefront of the equity work. So thank you, Dave and John, and all the directors and coordinators who are supporting this work. Thanks to all the principals who are leading in the buildings, and thanks to you for never giving up, because this could get wrong, but you never give up. So I appreciate the work you do. Great. And with that, we are just on time to introduce our guest. Dr. Cesar Cruz has dedicated his life to fighting for justice. He was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, or México. Voy a decirlo como es. And migrated to the United States at a young age with a single mother and a grandmother. He grew up in South Central LA and moved to the Bay Area to study. Cesar graduated with the UC Berkeley, from UC Berkeley with a BA in history. He has been an educator for 23 years in positions of leadership for the last 17 years. Most recently, serving as Dean of Secondary School Program at Harvard University. He received his doctorate in educational leadership at Harvard Graduate School of Education, becoming the first Mexican immigrant male to do so. It is with great pleasure that I invite to the stage to my colleague and friend, Dr. Cesar Cruz.
For me, it's a real honor to be here with y'all. And I'm a little emotional. I don't know if we can lower the volume somehow, but I'm a little emotional because this is also my first time just being in person with anybody, you know, outside of our immediate family. And so I just feel really privileged to get to be here with all of you. I had a chance to be here in Oregon right before the pandemic at the OALA conference. And to be able to get to return here to Forest Grove is such an honor for me. So thank you for allowing me this privilege. Should we go ahead and get started? Okay. What I wanted to do is if you'd be willing to write down your grandmother's name somewhere. And I'm so thankful to the organizers who put some paper at every table, and they also put some pens as well. If you don't mind, some of us are blessed to still have our grandmothers. I don't anymore, but if you don't mind writing your grandmother's name. And if you're able to, would you please write down your grandmother's name, but from 7 generations ago? And if for whatever reason you can't, would you write down that question? I want to know my grandmother's name from 7 generations ago. Because your family tree matters, and your roots matter. And this generation is really bold and audacious. They have these amazing shirts. I don't know if you've seen them. This generation has these shirts that says, I am my ancestors' most wildest dreams. And I think that you are, regardless of our age. And so I brought you a little bit of sage, and Superintendent, I promise not to set off too many fire alarms. I won't keep it on for too long, but I want to light a little bit of sage for the grandmas, for the great grandmas, and for the grandmothers from 7 generations ago. Would that be okay? I also want to light a little bit of sage for you, because I don't know what the last 2+ years have been like for you. I lost my brother-in-law during the pandemic. We had multiple staff in our organization, be affected by COVID in so many different ways. So many people have lost their jobs, and it has been really, really trying times. I had no idea I would make it to this Saturday morning. And I don't know if you did. And the thing is, I know enough to know this, that I don't have Sunday promised. So I know I have this moment, and I know I have today. And I'm not a pessimist by any means of the imagination, but I really know I don't have tomorrow promised. And the pandemic reminded me of that. So would it be okay if I light a little bit of sage for you? I also want to ask permission to speak, because I'm speaking out of turn, and I haven't asked the elders permission to speak. I know this is indigenous land. I know that some of you are indigenous people, and there are many indigenous people in this land and in this area, including the Karapuya, but also the Mexica, both the recognized tribes and the unrecognized tribes. So I want to light a little sage for them as well. And one thing that I want to ask you is, would you allow yourselves permissions to reflect? Would you allow yourself permission to be a student and a teacher at this moment? Because you're always called to be a teacher. By the way, how many of you are also parents? Woo, respect. No, keep them up, like be proud. Like, oh, that's for a reason. You made a sacrifice to come out on a Saturday. How many of you have young kids? Like under 5? Respect, 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 respect. We have a 10-year-old who's acting like she's 30. We have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. We have elementary school, middle school, and high school, all on 3 different campuses, and making do. And so just respect for all of you. Not that I don't respect you if you're not a parent. Not that at all, but it's just, it's an extra level of work. Any grandparents in the building? Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. Respect to you young elders, and thank you for the generations that you're taking care of. And so as I light this sage, I want to invite you to think about grandma and great grandma. Think about ancestors. Think about just people dreaming for your existence and in your dreams for your children or grandchildren or for your students and for your community. Great Spirit, just really thankful for every human being that's here. I just want to pray for all of our ancestors, for the people here in Forest Road, for the teachers, for the staff, for the parents, for the kids, for the community. May this be a useful moment in time for us to reflect, for us to grow, and just thank you for this gift called a heartbeat and being able to breathe. Sometimes I don't count my blessings. I sometimes don't count the blessings if I have a bed and I have a roof and I have gasoline, as expensive as it is. And I'm just thankful for all of those blessings. And it's through those blessings that I'll take a look at what's in front of us and what's behind us. Thank you for this opportunity to be in front of these amazing people. And in the way that I give thanks, I say, Meshikatiawi, Ashe, Amen. All right. Is it okay if we continue? Okay. I got a chance to see some of your schools yesterday. And as I was cruising around, I just saw a lot of beauty. And I know it's hard to tell from the angle that we're at, but this school says, Nadie es como tú, y ese es tu poder. I saw that at the front of a school, and I got so excited. No one is like you, and that's your power. What a beautiful school you have, and what a way to welcome kids. And then I went to another school, and then it has a Chicas program coming up. And I was like, I can't wait. You know, I'm not a Chica, but I can't wait to see it. You know, and that's beautiful. And then they say they have Ballet Folklorico on Tuesdays. I'm like, I gotta go Ballet Folklorico on Tuesdays, and I can't wait to go to the Chicas program on Thursdays. That's just amazing. And then I saw this truck, y'all, and this truck feeds the people, and it's at the cultural center. And you know, I started dreaming about the way you take care of the community. When I met the superintendent, he was telling me about high school kids who are bagging groceries and how a lot of you were feeding the community in the middle of a pandemic and continuing to do so. And I told the superintendent, I can't wait to meet those students. So I saw a lot of beauty in just in the few moments that I was here yesterday. I hope you'll invite me to your schools one day so I can get to go inside and see the beauty that's there as well. But then I also saw this. It's kind of hard. Can you see it? You can? I'm having a hard time seeing it. But I saw a abandoned gas station, and I saw some fresh paint. And graffiti is oftentimes labeled as criminal behavior, as vandalism. And I understand why, because usually it's young people who are, going into private spaces and putting up some things up there. But this one said rest in peace. And the next one said rest in peace. And I've only ever seen 4 types of graffiti in my lifetime. I've seen the name of a person because they want to be seen. I've seen the name of their neighborhood because they're proud of their neighborhood. I've seen rest in peace so-and-so because they're in a constant state of mourning. Sometimes it's undiagnosed PTSD and the post becomes permanent. And then sometimes it says free and then fill in the blank. They want freedom for a family member or a friend who's been locked up in jail. And I understand why we erase over the kid's name, and we erase over their neighborhood, and we erase over their mourning, and we erase over the freedom that they want because they're vandalized. But we don't do the same thing with multinational corporations when they buy billboards. And when many of them are sexist billboards, half-naked women trying to sell us alcohol, and we don't call that corporate vandalism or corporate graffiti, we just call that an ad. But Corporations want to be seen and kids want to be seen. So I took notice of the neighborhood as well. I have to admit though, when I was around Cornelius, I was ready to move in. I saw that neighborhood, I saw that cultural center, I saw that clinic. I was like, somebody sign me up. Is anybody here from Cornelius? Okay, I want to yours. Recruit me. I want to be a diversity hire. Get me in. Get me in, coach. I also got a lot of shout outs. I want to thank Diana, Elsavia, and I apologize if I mispronounce your names. Always check me with love. Alejandro, Courtney, Armando, Wendy, Joel, who I met earlier in the morning, first person I met, Lynn, Danielle, Lisa, another Danielle, I believe, I hope, Megan, and Anonymous, and you know who you are, Anonymous. I want to thank you because you wrote me love letters. You wrote me love letters about how much you care about the school district and what you do, and you shared some insights, and that helped me grow quite a bit. Now, can I be an expert at your school or your school district from one little outside visit and a few love letters? Absolutely not. So I hate when people come and try to tell us what to do and tell us how to be and talk to us about equity this and equity that. I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try with a lot of love and share the little that I know, but also for us to have a conversation together, if that makes sense. Is that all right? I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and then I'm going to focus on other things. And so I come to Forest Grove as a grandchild. And so I'm going to take this off because I came a little too fancy, y'all. And so I'm going to take this off. And I want to take it off because I want to show you my ancestors. And so here's my grandfather, Angel, may he rest in peace. And here's my grandmother, Socorro. These are not gang tattoos. These are tattoos that came into my body at a place of mourning when I lost my ancestors, the people who raised me and took care of me. And I come with me with a lot of generation of warriors and ancestors that are there and that are always with me. That's me at 5 years old, y'all. I used to be hella cute. I used to be hella cute. And I was in Tuxtlan, Jalisco, Mexico. I was at a school that was as exciting as what you were talking about. You're talking about Spider-Man, and then you're talking about learning about Latino heroes and sheroes, and you're talking about slime and the gooiness of eggs. I want to be at your school. I used to love school. And then something happened. Like my light got dim. I think I got the English and the math beaten into me so much, 7, 8 hours a day. We never did slime in my school. You know, there was never opportunity for fun and joy. Are you kidding me? I didn't look forward to school. But that's a point in my life where I still had joy. Now, I didn't know what I didn't know. How many of you have never read this book called Subtractive Schooling? I know I have it. Who hasn't read it? I never even heard of it. Please write it down if you don't mind. You're really busy. And I don't encourage you to read the whole thing. I just encourage you to read the introduction. And you can get it for free online. It's called Subtractive Schooling by Dr. Angela Valenzuela. And I like saying the name that way because I never grew up in school reading authors who sounded like me. I didn't know that we were scholars too. No disrespect to other communities. But Dr. Angela Valenzuela, who's a professor at UT Austin, has this theory. And it's a weird theory. By the way, I'm going to share some thoughts today that I don't want you to own. Do y'all have red boxes in Oregon? Y'all have red boxes where you rent movies?
Oh,
yeah. I'm old school. I'm more VHS, Blockbuster. You know what I mean? But I can adapt a little bit. All these new apps can't keep up. But when you go to Redbox, you check out a movie, and sometimes I think I'm choosing the movie, but someone chose the 99 titles for me to have choices on. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm choosing, I guess. And so I put my money, I get my movie, and if I don't like it, I can return it. I want to ask you to do the same this morning. Just rent these ideas. Rent the next 90 minutes. And if you don't like it, return it. I also want you to keep track of when you disagree with anything I say, because it's 100% okay to disagree. The fancy language is they call it cognitive dissonance. Oh, snap, you know those big words. Cognitive dissonance is just when something doesn't compute in our brain with something the speaker says. Like something that's happening in our brain. is saying, I don't compute, I don't compute, I don't agree, I don't agree. Just keep track of that. You might even have a scorecard of the number of times you have cognitive dissonance, and that's okay. But just be aware of when it happens, right? But subtractive schooling, Dr. Valenzuela says, oh man, this is hard to talk about. She says that the more time that you spend in most US schools, the more things get subtracted from you. She says that school is actually bad for your health. What? She says that the more time you spend in schools, your heroes, your pride, your culture, your language, and your roots get taken from you. So Cesar becomes Caesar, and Maria becomes Mary. And I have a big cactus on my forehead, but I don't even know that I have it because I'm no longer even proud to be Mexican. I want to be anything but. Because I never learned anything prideful about being Mexican in school. Because I didn't go to your schools. And so I didn't know, y'all, that I've been subtractively schooled. And as I go throughout the country, I meet a lot of people who have been subtractively schooled too. You can be Irish and be subtractively schooled. Because if all you ever learn as an Irish American is that you have some kind of leprechaun and there's a rainbow and that we're somehow drunkards, that's not okay, right? Many people are subtractively schooled. And so don't let that hit you, because I'll say some things. Don't let them stay here too long. I'm asking you to take care of your heart a lot. And you know, let it leave the heart. But there is an exercise called subtractive schooling that happens every day in our schools throughout the country, still to this day, when there are no mirrors in the textbooks, when we can't see ourselves. So when the Guatemalan students can't see themselves in the curriculum, they're being subtractively schooled. And we didn't mean to do that. But now that we know, what do we do? Is it okay to continue? Getting a call and they're saying we're saying too much. Osvaldo, stop it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is a weird map because I've been your beaner and your illegal alien for as long as I know I'm from another planet and I know I'm a wetback. Because I thought that was my first, middle, and last name. It's what I always hear in textbooks, on the news, on TV, and from some of my teachers at the time. And so what I didn't know is that the way to pronounce this state is Oregon, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, California. And I didn't know this was Mexico. And I didn't know we're not recent arrivals. I didn't know that I didn't cross the border, but the border crossed me. But because I didn't know that, I played your part. I was your evil alien. I was your cleaner. I was your docile Mexican. I was your like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity on my own land. And my back died. I didn't learn anything about my history till year 13 of school. I never learned it in kindergarten and 12th grade. I didn't have teachers like you. I didn't have teachers who knew what the Chicano movement was. I didn't have posters of Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez. I wasn't learning about Reyes Lopez Tijerina or Lolita Lebron or Heidi Santa Maria or Rigoberta Menchú. I just wasn't learning that. I'm excited for those of you that are writing these names down because you're like, I gotta teach these in the class. So I encourage you to write these names down. And as I began to learn my history, something happened to my physiology. Have y'all ever seen someone hella cute? Oh, hella is not just a word from the valley. It's also from Oakland, California. And I came all the way to Forest Grove to see an Oakland A's fan. So I'm feeling very mirrored here. This fucker looks like me. I'm like, I might learn something. So that's beautiful. But I don't see you taking notes. No, I'm just kidding. Wait, I got security over here. And making my silly jokes, I forgot my point. Where was I? Paying attention? Oh, somebody cute. Somebody cute. So, have you ever seen someone super cute and something happens to your sweaty, to your palms, or to the hair on your body? Am I the only one? Nobody has ever had a physiological reaction. No? She says every day. Thank you. This is Gilly's squad. I'm sitting with Tilly. And so I went to y'all school, by the way. And so I was there yesterday. I saw the Bible church next door. Yeah, so I was just checking y'all out. So why is that funny? Huh? Yeah. I make no connections, right? And so, but have you ever had to take a test and you're super nervous? And your body starts to have something happen. I didn't know that history could come alive, but when I walked in the room, I almost had a heart attack when I saw this book that y'all are about to try out. There's a book on here and a whole series on here that sees my people in a beautiful way. And although, you know, when I looked at the chapters, they keep calling everything a myth. That's a little hard to bear. But it steps in the right direction. But when I saw this, I was like, Forest Grove is the bomb. I love where y'all going. And that was beautiful. And what happened is when I started to learn my history, I began to have physiological responses. But I also had that when I learned African American studies, even though I'm not Black. And when I learned Asian American studies, even though I'm not Asian American. And when I learned women's studies, because I was super ignorant to women's studies and women's issues. And so even though those are not necessarily my identity markers, learning that kind of history woke up something in me. Has anybody ever had that experience? I'm preaching to the choir then, but I'm gonna need the choir to sing. Does that make sense? Because sometimes I sit in the choir and I'm like, yes, but I don't really sing the song when I'm alone at Dilly, and I gotta have them hard conversations with the NPC. Does that make sense? Well, y'all just got it. Like it was just on it this morning. I love it. I love it. I love it. I didn't know that I'd be an educator, and I've been an educator now for 27 years, even though I'm only 21 years old. That's pretty magical. And it's true. I am the first Mexican immigrant male in this particular doctrine. There's been Mexicans going to Harvard for 300 years. Nothing new about me. It's just in this particular doctorate in education leadership, I was the first, and I got to graduate the stage with my 3 little ones. And I got to give the commencement speech in Spanish. What? And my mom was in the front row laughing and yelling at me while I was doing it. I also get to have a wonderful family. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary, my wife and I, and she's in the back. I'm embarrassed a little bit. That's a different workshop. I also get to run an organization called Homies Empowerment. And it's this organization, I didn't come to talk to you about it today, but it's this organization. Let me describe something to you real fast. You got to wear a certain color out on the streets. You got to put in work. You got to sell product. You got to be loyal. There's going to be a ceremony to bring you in. What am I describing? Yes, the Girl Scouts. You got to wear a certain color, Girl Scouts. You got to put in that work and sell that product. You got to be loyal. We're going to bring you in. And the Girl Scouts get celebrated in America. But I was also describing gangs. And gangs are the urban terrorists of the world. And we hate them. And we want to lock them up and throw away the key. And most of us have never been in gangs or studied gangs, so we don't know why kids join them. We don't know that they want a big brother and a big sister, a sense of belonging, a naming ceremony, a rites of passage. They want protection after school, and sometimes they don't get it from the neighborhood or the police department. So it's easy to, again, remember, you're renting ideas. So if you're having cognitive dissonance, and like, he did what with gangs? He compared them to Girl Scouts? How dare he? There's the door. I get it. Write that down. And if you've never heard gangs described this way by the local news, right? You have the right to only question me and not question the news. But what if gangs are organized fraternities and sororities? And what if the problem is not the gang, but the lack of resources that then pits people against each other, and then there's violent crimes that are committed in the name of certain things? So just food for thought, just a red box moment to rent. And so we've developed an organization in Oakland, California, that looks at young people in gangs and sees them through their assets. And we're building a school that gang members would want to go to, and we're building a whole school ecosystem. And if you invite me back, I'll tell you about that, because ultimately it's about getting kids to want to come, right? And so I just want to name, this is how I'm showing up. And I'm excited to be here with y'all this morning. Is it cool to continue? Okay. Now, I want you to turn to a neighbor, but because Dilly is so hardcore right here, I'm going to see if you're not from Dilly. So if you two could pair up and you two could pair up, and I want you to decide who's going to go first. You're each going to have a sacred minute. And I'm going to be the rude one that at a minute says, go ahead and switch. And I want you to talk to your neighbor. I don't need no Webster definition. What is critical hope to you? I added the word critical. Whatever you think it means to you, no wrong answers. So if y'all are all Echo Shaw, went to your school, loving it. And so Echo Shaw, if you can find someone else or just don't echo too loudly, okay? See what I did there, but decide who's gonna go first and come back really quickly. So find a partner, decide who's gonna go first. What is critical hope? And I'll let you know when it's time to switch. I'm gonna give you 20 seconds to find a partner. Go for it. If it's possible. I'm starting the timer now. Who's first to go? Please go ahead and switch. Please switch. Allow them to would you please take your partner and come back? Please take your partner and come back. Now, you may have heard something from your partner that you're like, that's the bomb, I need to write that down. Or you yourself are the bomb, and you might be like, I need to write that down. So, because critical hope is what's going to get us through all pandemics. It's what's gotten us through all pandemics. And this isn't the first one, or will it be the last? Our ancestors have been through so much, from genocide and everything else, right? And the people are resilient amidst war in Yemen or war in the Ukraine. Our people will always find a way out of no way. So take a moment to reflect, and I want to ask someone in the back who has a really powerful teacher voice to read for us one definition. This is Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade's definition. He has some ingredients that he put on there for critical hope. Who'd like to read for it in the back? And I think we have a mic too, right? I don't know if it's working. Is the mic working?
Yeah.
They got it. They got it. Who'd like to read what critical hope is? Yeah, please, with your awesome educated voice. I'm gonna just sit.
Critical hope reflects the ability to realistically assess one's environment through a lens of equity and justice, while also envisioning the possibility of a better future.
Woo! Can we give some love? If you're taking notes, would you please kind of highlight in your notes, realistically assess one's environment? That word realistic, you can spend some time on. Because I could analyze an environment through a lens of there's no hope, and whatever you believe is true. The other part of it is not only a lens of equity, but equity is a tool for justice. So we're gathered at this equity gathering, but for what? For justice for all. And then we also have to envision the possibility of a better future. All of the people that came before me, that's all they spoke about. They didn't sit on their, or rest on their laurels of what was happening in the past. They keep trying to make this school district better. And sometimes, okay, I can be pessimistic and I can be like, we're not doing enough, or we're doing too much, right? But the question becomes, how do we envision a better future when oftentimes what we hear on the news is that nothing's ever going to change, right? That's real. That's real. It's hard to do so. So I kind of want to have critical hope, but we've been dealing with multiple pandemics. The pandemic of poverty, the pandemic of inflation, the pandemic of all of the isms that were there before, and then COVID showed up. And it just exacerbated everything else. And we have constant deaths and a lot of feelings of despair and fear. What I began to hear from my therapist friends is they didn't know who they would go to. When a lot of us really leaned on going to our therapists or counselors or trying it for the first time when this got really scary, right? So who does the therapist go to? Who does the counselor go to? And so I want to have you stay in your seat this time, so it's okay to talk to a table mate. And if you were talking to the same person, whoever went first, now shall be last. What the heck is this other concept? What is learned helplessness? So would you turn to a neighbor, someone really close to you, for the sake of time, decide who wants to go first. And what is learned helplessness? Decide who wants to go first. If you have a minute now, you know when it's time to switch.
Even if you will see the option. Please thank your neighbor and come on back. Please thank your neighbor and come on back. Good folks, please thank your neighbor and come on back. Can I share a little bit about what I learned? So I had an awesome partner, and I always want to ask permission to see if it's okay to share. But sometimes what I learned is that learned helplessness is a defense mechanism for something, and it might be a survival tool. So it's easy for us to judge it, but we don't know people's context. And sometimes it's a survival tool. That's going to be so necessary when towards the end, we're going to learn of a tool called immunity to change tool and an immunity to change map that makes it hard to create change when we have some competing and hidden commitments to other things. So just previewing the future, thanks to my amazing teammate. Did y'all thank your amazing partners? Beautiful. Now, if I can get another voice, this is a different definition of learned helplessness. Who can share this one with us? Who can read it out loud in their most powerful educator voice?
Learned helplessness happens when people or animals become conditioned to believe that that situation is unchangeable or inescapable.
Have we ever seen that in our students? And our teachers sometimes too. Have we ever seen that in our community? In our families? In our places of worship? It might live in a lot of places. I'm gonna take you. I wasn't able to afford all the plane tickets, but I'm gonna take you to India anyway. We're gonna go to India, and this is no disrespect to Indian society at all. It's just a case study there. And I'm gonna take you to experience an elephant and what this elephant is going through. It's a 45-second video. And as you're looking at this video, take the rope as a metaphor. And then we're gonna study the rope and the elephant.
What is learned helplessness? Well, in India, when elephant trainers catch a baby elephant, they tie its legs with a rope to a post. And this baby elephant will struggle for days trying to break free, and it eventually gives up when it learns that it's useless. When it grows up, these trainers keep it tied using the same rope. And even though it's now strong enough to break free and escape, the elephant stands around waiting for the trainers because it's learned that it's meaningless. This elephant has developed what's known as learned helplessness. And this is the fact that despite having the power to change its situation, it's learned to feel helpless because of the past.
It's learned to feel helpless because of the past. And so, would you indulge me? Would you write that question down for yourselves? And you don't have to answer it now. What's the rope, or maybe there's more than one? What are the ropes that exist in our lives that try to get us to learn helplessness? I have a feeling, I'm going to use a sociological term right now. There's a lot of badassery here. I hope that's not a curse word. I hope that's a sociological term. So I don't think this is a choir that does learn helplessness. But if it ever were to exist, remember, it's a sociological term. Use your badassery. And we want to analyze what are the ropes in our lives. Now, but something makes it even more difficult because we might identify the rope that is trying to teach us learn helplessness. But then there's an anchoring system And these picket anchors make it hard to get away from the road. And so the next question I want you to write down for self-reflection over the weekend is, what keeps anchoring in this road? Because I'm free. Listen, you might judge me or hate me, but if I identify as LGBTQIA+, society judges me, it treats me a certain kind of way, but I have chosen to be free. I will no longer be in bondage of that rope that tells me that somehow something is wrong with me. But yet there's these picket that keep anchoring that in. I go to my house, I go to my place of worship, I go to the school, I drive into the city, I see certain flags. I start to notice that someone keeps trying to anchor me in. What are those anchors that keep anchoring stuff in? What is this? What is that? It's a noose, right? And sometimes it's used for lynchings, and sometimes we hang ourselves with it. And there's all kinds of hangings that take place, and there's all kinds of lynchings that take place, physical, mental, spiritual. Some of us get so beaten up that we make it to middle school, and we say to you, I don't think I want to live anymore. It's heavy. Again, take care of your corazones, please. Osvaldo and the superintendent said, this is going to pump you up. And you're like, Cesar sucks. He just put a noose up there. So I promise to pivot away. There was a courageous organization that used to put up these signs outside of their window, knowing that they were going to get attacked after they did it. So there was a human being that was lynched on top of a tree, and no one would talk about it, but the NAACP would put a sign outside of their window, and they would say, a man was lynched yesterday. And then very recently, the Black Lives Matter movement, in one of their offices, put a sign like this, a man was lynched by police yesterday. That's heavy, right? And those of us that are in law enforcement, that have family in law enforcement, know that it isn't a black and white issue, it's complicated, but a real life was killed, and this is how the Black Lives Movement was seeing it. What I have yet to see in a school, and as a fellow educator, I would have a hard time dealing with this, I would have my own cognitive dissonance, is that I've never seen a sign that says a mind was lynched at school today. And mental lynching is some of the worst form of lynching. I don't know if you remember or you had those moments in your life when someone told you in first, second, or third, or fourth grade that you're not going to be nothing. Then why bother trying? I don't know if you've ever been hurt that way before, if you carry those lacerations. But Dr. Olson wrote a whole book about it called Wounded by School. And I really highly recommend it, because the last chapters are about unwounding teachers, unwounding schools, and unwounding districts. But many of us have been wounded at school with these lacerations. Now, I am going to reveal some of my own lacerations, and it'll get hard. I no longer drink alcohol. I haven't really drank alcohol in large amount. And I guess I equate it to as long as I've known my wife, over 20 years. But when these come up, we're all going to leave, and I'm going to be like, what do I do with my wounds that I put them out there? So I want to ask for your grace as I'm vulnerable. I experienced something that's diagnosed by Dr. Mindy Foley Love as root shock. Dr. Mindy Foley Love is an African-American doctor that should be on the posters of every classroom. And she diagnoses root shock as what happens when the people get constantly uprooted. Either they're constantly moving, gentrification, migration, war, and you experience a kind of root shock where the plant is not ever really able to grow. And so you're all very welcoming to newcomers that are coming in, but if they're experiencing root shock and they're not seeing the soil as very fertile, it's hard to grow here. It's really hard to grow here. The second thing I'm experiencing is a book from the 1980s and early 90s that I never read. And it's a misnomer. The name of the book says, Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong by Dr. James Lowen. Dr. James Lowen is a white sociologist, and the reason I named him as that is sometimes we think that the people that take a knee are always people of color. But Dr. James Lowen took a knee on American history, and the country got so upset that they banned the book. If you notice, there's a US history book there, and he put a big can of whitewashed paint on top of it. And he's the one that taught me that Irish people are not drunkards and they're not leprechauns, and it's not about rainbows. But we've been lied to so much by this mythology, this like non-history, non-culturally responsive education, that he took a knee on top of US history, and instead of having us read the book and question it, they just banned it. And so if you're a rule follower, don't buy the book. Don't order it, don't skim it, don't question it, don't read it. But if you are a sociologist and practicing badassery, Amazon that sucker right now. I'm just kidding. I mentioned subtractive schooling, and I'm not African American, but I saw myself described in the most important book of African American studies called The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And in the 1990s, one of my favorite singers/rappers, Lauryn Hill, turned it into a Grammy-winning album called The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And The Miseducation of the Negro talks about that in schools, when they constantly teach us a slave history, they actually teach us learned helplessness. I didn't know that I was being subtractively schooled. Now, this is the book that I want you to read called Wounded by School, that talks about how school wounds, like, listen, and this is such a courageous leader, I'm gonna take your freaking soap away. Y'all are not worthy of soap. And then she had a come to Jesus moment. I know I can't talk about Jesus in school, so I apologize, but she's over here in her office, and she's like, I took their freaking soap? Are you kidding me? Yeah, but they don't respect the bathroom. I took their freaking soap? Are you kidding me? We're kindred spirits. I can do that, right? Right. And so it just takes a lot of guts to look in the mirror and to realize I made a mistake. And now I'm wounding kids because I'm lecturing to them about the value of a temple that is a toilet. It's not. But we can do something proactive about it. We got a muralist, we painted it, and now it's thebomb.com. Creative teacher, creative leader, creative principal. But these wounds might stick around forever, right? And sometimes we want to really inspire little Johnny, and we think reverse psychology is going to work. We don't always know that our reverse psychology or our certain kind of humor might damage Johnny forever. I know that because I carried 23 years of those scars. That's why I stopped teaching. Now, you've studied this, but I began to develop imposter syndrome. I began to develop an inferiority complex. And I'm not a minority, but I was minoritized. And if that's a new term for you, write it down. Because when you minoritize people, you don't make a major. You make a minor. And everybody wants to be in the major leagues, not the minor leagues. So it's really awesome when you're the majority, but it really sucks when you're the minority. Here's another thing that's crazy that we should challenge. We love charity and charitable people, but some of us become the perpetual charity. And we don't question the charity industrial complex of who gets to be charitable and who's perpetual charity. Again, if you're having cognitive dissonance, please write it down. Right? Because there's so much to unpack in limited time. So I began to develop all kinds of things, y'all, based on how I was schooled. I began to develop self-doubt, self-sabotage, learned hopelessness. Oh man, I was a hot mess. That's why I didn't apply for that position to be assistant principal at Forest Grove. That's why I didn't step up. Because I always questioned myself. Because I had been chopped down for so long, and now that the rope was gone, I let it tie me. The rope's gotten heavy. Could you please write down that question before we move on? How has the empire try to put ropes around your hope. If you don't believe another world is possible, they got you. How many of y'all are deep students of Madiba, of Nelson Mandela? It was in his 27th year of being in isolation in a prison where he was deep in prayer. And it was in his 29th year that he got out of prison. And it was in his 31st year that he became the president of South Africa. And he began to work with white folks. And they took on the system of legal segregation called apartheid. But I don't know if I could have that kind of hope, 27 years in prison. Still believe in the humanity of people, because you have so much data in front of you to say, F it, screw it, nothing's gonna change. So who are we studying? Are we studying the news or are we studying Madiba Nelson Mandela? And as a teacher, who are you offering in front of kids? So what happens if you offer Madiba? Malala. What starts to happen when you've been shot and you stand up as a teenager, right? There's power in Madiba and Malala. It really, really is. Now, this is the thing though, I'm Pisces, so I get affected. Well, that's not the water, thank you. Thank you. This is equity, because some people just need one, but you get tired of three. So thank you for that equity or the water. Some people are more thirsty. Oh, and there's another one over here. My goodness, it's like multiple access points. Not only, I hate this because I'm a fish, I'm a Pisces, and the longer you swim in a culture, the more invisible it becomes. I don't know I've become subtractive in school. I am probably the best representative of whiteness and white privilege because I believed in its norms, I believed in its ways. And when I say that, we're not attacking white people, we're attacking this system that homogenizes certain things, where white people, if I'm Scottish, if I'm Irish, from wherever I'm from, they don't teach me my culture either. And I have benefited from certain parts of the culture, and I don't even know to question it. It's the way we do things around here. You violated the rules, you know you couldn't tag, so I gotta get rid of the soap, right? Now, this is a beautiful word, critical hope, but inside of it, it needs three conditions. It's like when you're planting seeds, it needs certain conditions. The soil needs to be right? You need to have the right kind of fertilizer. You need to have the right kind of water ratio and sun ratio. Well, hope needs conditions. The first one is it needs material hope. Then it needs Socratic hope. And then it needs my favorite, audacious hope. Let's take a look at what those look like. So this idea of material hope is that you have what you need to deal with the forces that affect our lives. So when you think about your kids in your schools, do their families have what they need to thrive? Are they living in a car? Are they living paycheck to paycheck? Do they have food, right? Do they have love? Are the basic things that Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, talked about in the 1940s when he went to Canada and he studied the Blackfoot Nation and he sort of borrowed all their wisdom and called it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it actually belongs to the Blackfoot Nation. You need physiological supports. You need home, stability, love, food, clothes, shelter, a sense of belonging. If you want your test scores to go up, if you take care of the foundation, everything will rise. Because if I feel safe, if I feel loved, if I have food in my body, if I have a sense of hope and a reason to get up, I will get straight A's. I guarantee it. I've never seen it not work. And so I want to show you what material hope can look like. So this is our good friend Steph Curry, who's introducing this video. And some of you may have seen a piece of it, but we made it a little different for today. Because in the middle of the pandemic in Oakland, now all of our families have lost their jobs and they're going hungry. And that has not stopped. The lines have not gotten smaller at our food pantry. Take a look.
My name is Cesar Cruz, and one of the founders of Homies and Howard. And we run a food pantry here in Oakland. The food, they're basic necessities that everyone should have a right to.
Before COVID-19, the Homies Empowerment Program operated as an independent after-school program in East Oakland. Now they've taken up a new mission, making food accessible to their community.
We want folks to like shop for free, so grab what they need.
Every Tuesday, they create a large storefront called the Freedom Store at a time when so many families need it the most. We have formula, and we respond to what the community needs and what the community asks for.
Pues lo primero me quedé sin trabajo. Me quedé sin trabajo cerrado donde yo trabajaba.
Los trabajos, si no los hemos perdido por completo, pues han bajado mucho los trabajos y estamos preocupados por pagar la renta, por comer.
La mayoría de personas estamos sin trabajo o hemos sufrido la pandemia también porque yo la he vivido.
Pues mucha gente que me ha recomendado aquí y por eso es que viene a pedir la comida. Pero no está, todos estamos bien, la vida muy bien.
Uno se siente apoyado económicamente, uno se siente apoyado moralmente.
Yo pienso de que son unas personas que Dios las ha puesto en nuestro camino, que nos han ayudado mucho en este tiempo que necesitamos.
We are not here to save anybody. We are not here to serve the poor. We are not here to see people in a demeaning and derogatory way. These people that are standing in line are my heroes. They are grandmas and uncles and aunties who are willing to do whatever it takes to take care of their community, and we are just humbly standing in solidarity with them. The question I'd like for you to jot down as you reflect during the coming semester is, what material hope might our families and students need during these times? And it's okay to not know, and it's also okay to send surveys home. And it's also okay to ask to do so in a culturally appropriate way. But what material hope might change the dial in terms of what's happening? You know how in school sometimes they don't let you cheat? Please share answers. So I'm gonna move on, but you may not have gotten the whole question. Just kind of peek at your neighbor's answer and peek at their question and share it. Be a sharing neighbor. The second bit of hope is this idea of Socratic hope. This notion that the required and painful examination of our lives and actions within an unjust society and the recognition that pain can pave the path towards justice. So it's this analysis of what's happening in our lives. It's what some of you called critical thinking. It's what some of you call research projects or inquiry-based projects, where as a kindergartner, you're learning about what's in the water. How do we test the water, right? And you can do that at any grade level at any moment in time. I mentioned these words earlier. Is that I've been walking with these words, and many of my community have been walking with this idea that they're beaners, that they're illegal aliens, that they're anchor babies, and that they're forever foreigners, perpetual foreigners. This is a real question. When did white migration start in Forest Grove? Who knows? Who's got an answer for me? When did white migration begin here? When do you think? Yeah, like 1800s, because we heard about the Oregon Trail and the gold rush, and we glorify that. So for sure, it's like 1840s, 1850s. I think you would be historically accurate. When did Mexican migration start in Forest Grove?
1960.
1960s? That's a really good guess. I wanted to do some research because this is the moment where I didn't want to share my opinion. I wanted to ground it on primary documents. And so I first looked up the Oregon Historical Society website. And on their website, it says, grounded in this place, a deep history of Latino activism in Oregon. And then I found two books, y'all. I hope these are on your shelves, and I hope that if they're not, you'll order them. But the first one says Latino Roots, and the next one, Of Forest and Fields, Mexican Labor in the Pacific Northwest. Now pause for a second because I appreciate this leader who's taking a picture of the books. Now, have any of y'all heard of Dr. Lynn Stephen? Dr. Lynn Stephen is phenomenal. She's waiting to come to Forest Grove. She is over at the University of Oregon in the Department of Anthropology. White woman who wrote Latino Roots. Badassery. And I brought Dr. Stephen to Forest Grove. You gotta come, you gotta check them out. And so Dr. Stephen came, and she is speaking at the very last time they were able to gather before the pandemic at the Historical Society. And she's letting people know about Oregon and about Latino migration. And then she's gonna talk about some weird concept called racialization of a city like Forest Grove. Check this out. It's a 90-minute speech, but you're only gonna hear a minute.
Border territory. So what this actually means historically, although I'm going to start in the 1850s, it's completely logical that trade, commerce, and people moved back and forth and up and down through that area in the 1700s, the 1800s, and the 1900s. So the story of Latino immigration and settlement and movement doesn't start with the Bracero program in 1940. It goes back much further. This is another map that I use to teach, to talk about how space becomes racialized and becomes, in this case, white, with this map sort of showing wagon trains proceeding along the Oregon Trail in the territory with nobody else there. And in fact, the space was occupied by Native peoples.
So I stop right there.
There was a border.
But before going there, so according to this professor, the earliest signs of Mexicans in this territory is about the 1700s. So if you don't mind writing that down, because if we think it's the 1960s, it's because that's what we've been taught. But Mexicans were here in Forest Grove before whites. Just a historical fact. And so what does that do then? What does that do then to the question of who's an immigrant? Do we ever think about white folks in Forest Grove as immigrants? Would we ever call white people in Forest Grove illegal aliens? Why wouldn't we? It's okay to have cognitive dissonance, but it's also important to center the primary documents. The Mexicans in Forest Grove are not migrants here. They've been coming up and down trading forever, and even before it was called Mexico. And so to continue to call Mexican people recent arrivals or immigrants is not only a misnomer, but it is historically inaccurate. And so if we're going to continue to perpetuate certain myths, then we're doing what's called subtractive schooling. And so what I asked of Forest Grove, and I can't wait to come back, is to see lessons that are grounded in research from the University of Oregon in these books, where we look at that Mexicans have been here since time immemorial. And what does that look like? And we might see the Mexican community differently if they're no longer the perpetual foreigner. Now, this concept is a really important one because what the doctor was saying is that we've imposed a racial interpretation of what we think Forest Grove is. So in our popular imagination, we think of it, back in the day, it was all white. That's historically inaccurate. That's historically inaccurate. But if our story begins with the Oregon Trail and nobody's here, that's nice for Wells Fargo, but that's historically inaccurate. And what happens, it erases peoples, and it erases truth. And you are all truth seekers because we know the truth shall set us free. Now, we began to illegalize, like, I wasn't born in the 40s, I was born in the 70s, but I started getting called illegal as a people in the 1940s. So when you want to teach not about illegals, but about the illegality or the creating of an illegal, it started in the 1940s, and that's when they began to racialize Mexicans in Oregon. And that's when that phrase started to come about. And I'd be happy to share resources with you for kindergarten classes and for 12th grade classes and everyone in between. So when we think about Socratic hope, it's about the painful examination of our society, which we just did in about 7 minutes. And the question becomes, if you don't mind jotting this down, is what Socratic hope might our students need in schools? Because if they saw themselves mirrored on the walls, like in those books, and they realized that I come from Forest Grove, I didn't cross the border crossed me. I'm just a recent migrant of a very long journey that I've always been here. Like maybe you've always been here. So then we would see ourselves as sisters and brothers differently, and then your success is mine. Or if we go from a faith-based perspective, it's love thy neighbor as thyself. So some people question the equity work, and they have a right to, because we haven't equated it to that's our sisters and brothers, and it's love thy neighbor as thyself. And if you're hungry and I have a little bit of extra, it's making sure you have what you need to succeed in school. It's as simple as that. Now, can we get to audacious hope? Audacious is y'all. It boldly stands in solidarity with underserved communities. That's what y'all do. It agrees to share the burden of injustice while defying the dominant ideology that benefits the privileged while sacrificing the marginalized others. That's why I love Larry Ilion, Lolita Lebron, Emiliano Zapata, Audre Lorde, Harriet Tubman, John Trudell, Yuriko Chiyama, and El Haj Malik El Shabazz, and so many more. And that's why they live all over my curriculum, because they practice audacious hope. And so I began to choose ancestors. So now that they're gone to the spirit world, at night, when the thoughts creep in, the fear, the worry, how am I going to pay my bills? My mom is sick. What's happening with my stepdad? What's happening with my kids? Everybody's getting COVID. All the fear shows up at night. My chosen ancestors come and they write me love letters. They literally do it. They say, Cesar, we got to talk to you. And Malcolm, my great-grandmother shows up, Harriet Tubman, and Reyes Tijerina, and they write me letters, and they give me a 21-foot ladder for my 20-foot problems. I'm dealing with cancer and evictions and gentrification, and they're very real 20-foot problems. And my ancestors write to me and say, Mijo, there's always a way. We've beaten cancer and COVID before. We've beaten genocide and war before. We will find a way. Don't lose hope. And so my hope is that you start writing love letters to yourselves tonight and this weekend and the rest of your days, and some of you already do. And I think for me, it started with I had to have an awareness of the possibility of critical hope. But if you stay studying the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords and the Brown Berets and the Zapatistas and the United Farm Workers and PCUN and all of these movements for justice, you start to develop that critical hope. And we're always under construction. We're always learning something new. What's amazing about all of us here is that we're always learning. It's not true that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's just that old dog has to be willing to reflect of maybe we should do a mural. Not that you're an old dog, that's not what I'm saying. Not at all. Careful, careful. I want to take you to a really hard place for me, and it's going to seem simple, and I'm going to show you a real tool. I hate when they give us tools and trainings, and they're kind of useless, and I don't know how to apply it. So I'm going to get right into the tool. It's going to seem really random. On the left side of a piece of paper, on the tool, you write down a goal that you want to achieve, but you cannot achieve. I really want to lose weight. That's my goal, but it's a goal that I haven't been able to achieve. So it has to be one of those hard goals. Like I want to make sure that 100% of our students graduate from Forest Grove college ready. It's a really hard goal, like this one. In the second column, without judging myself, I'm supposed to write down what I'm not doing instead of achieving that goal. Oh man, it's gonna get a little harder. I have to admit, I need to deal with my stressors. They have a numbing agent, especially sugar. What I didn't know is that sugar is connected to depression, but ice cream does help me in the moment. And then it makes it psychologically worse because of the sugars that go into my body, let alone the diabetes and everything else. I also work out very sporadically, and I go to food as my comfort. Why do you do those things? My auntie thought I was a really cute boy in that picture you saw earlier, and she decided to rape me for a year. And my mom had left me in Mexico under her care, and my father had already bounced. So I never want to be abused by my auntie again. And now I really enjoy being fat because I'm more invisible to women like my auntie. And I no longer have the gaze from those kind of women, the fatter I get. So I have some hidden commitments, and I have some competing commitments. I have an amazing goal. I have an equity goal, but I have some competing commitments. I have a hidden commitment to never get hurt again. I also don't want my mom to leave again. I wonder why my dad left. I never want to be seen through the lens that my tia would see me as. And I never want to look desirable. I want to look undesirable to predators. So I have this perfect immunity to change where I want to change. When you put the foot on the gas and move forward, I want to lose weight. But I have a really good brakes. Oh, you use the same foot for the brakes. I put the foot on the brakes because I'm secretly protecting myself from ever being violated again. So stop telling me to diet and stop telling me it's easy and tell me to join 24-hour fitness, because none of those equity addresses get to the root cause of me. And these are all metaphors for school systems, which we'll get to in a minute. I have some dreaded images. I have some worries. One of the worries is because my mother left me in Mexico and my father left me for good, and my tia raped me. I'm obviously unworthy of love. I deserve to be abandoned. So why do I even try to love myself if this is what the people that love me did to me? Why do I even want to lose weight? So I'm constantly battling myself as an internal school system, as an internal human being. I want to change, but I can't, because I'm protecting myself. And the scholar that I sat next to, you taught me that, because sometimes learned hopelessness is a defense mechanism, i.e. to defend myself, because the fatter I get, the less you look. Allow yourselves a deep breath. Now let's look at school systems. This is a really big goal, Superintendent. We want all of our students, not 80%, to graduate and be prepared for 4 years of college. Because you can graduate high school and not be prepared for anything. It's a big, audacious goal. But what am I doing instead? And I'm not assuming this is Forest Grove. This is just the majority of the schools that I visited in the country. What they do instead is that AP classes are mostly white students. And like the data shows here, remedial math is mostly Latino students, 73% here. Y'all don't have GATE, gifted and talented education, but you have something similar. You tag some kids and you don't tag others. And so we label some kids, you're gifted, you're obviously not. That messes us up. And we label them GATE or tag, you're it. You can be part of the cool club because y'all get to go see Spider-Man, you're tagged. But what if they didn't tag me? I'm not gifted and talented, y'all. We suspend certain kids and we label certain kids bullies or gang members or whatever, and it makes it easier to do to them what we're about to do to them. Why do we do these things? Well, we do them because we are serving. By having AP classes and having white students in them, we're serving them, and that is helping the graduation goal. And by having remedial math, we are serving some Latino kids and hopefully moving them up the math ladder. Sometimes we assume that folks who don't speak English are also not good at math and science. And somehow we think ELL means less than or equal to. Whereas for me, I was an ESL before ELL, but I was doing Algebra 1 in 3rd grade in Mexico in a rural school. But when I came to the US, it was assumed that I couldn't do basic timetables. And so when they assumed that of me, I produced that for them. I played the part. I just couldn't speak the language. But some of you believed in me so much, you got me through the Harvard doctorate. And I know you see that in your Forest Grove students. Every time you look at a Latino kid, you're looking at a Harvard doctorate. And when you look at them that way, the research shows it's going to happen. We have a narrow view of who's gifted. We have a very narrow tunnel. You obviously are. Sorry. You and me are not. And we're afraid of societal norms, of violence, of real violence, of violence on TV, and of the news. And so when they label kids as thugs or willfully defiant or gang members, it's hard to treat them with the same love. Now, we have a lot of hidden and competing commitments. We have our upbringing to uphold. We got to be well regarded in the community. We got to prevent sometimes immigrants and newcomers from taking over or taking advantage of us or being anger babies. Sometimes we have to uphold our whiteness, and especially people of color, we have to uphold our whiteness and our privileges and its benefits. We have to not risk our reputation or being judged. What if I'm the superintendent that takes on the school board this way or the town this way? Because when I'm coming into town, I see the sign that says F the governor. I know the message on the wall, and I see the Trump flag. Regardless of your political affiliation, I know what I'm coming into when I can't stand the governor. And I say that proudly outside of my house. I have a commitment to hiding the things I do not know. And I have some dreaded images and some really big worries. I'm worried that I'm being unworthy of respect if I go against the norm. How do I take on the church culture and say I'm for gay rights? How do I do that to my own grandparents, my own father? I don't want to be seen as a bigot or racist by admitting my shortcomings. I don't want to be a bad representative of my community or my people. I'm airing out my people's dirty laundry, and I'm causing irreparable harm to my relationships with my constituents. So I want to change as a school system, but I'm never going to. And I mean well as a school system when I love every single human being who's not white, and I create a cool category and I call it BIPOC. But that's not fair, because Black people aren't Latinos, and Latinos aren't Asians, and Asians aren't Native Americans. So we lump everything not white. Why does white get to have its own category and it's white and BIPOC? Like, when I experienced that and they told me at Harvard, we have a 33% BIPOC enrollment in your class, but I looked around, I'm actually the only Mexican in the room. But they told me I should celebrate it. But they lumped the whole world that ain't white, and that ain't right. So we have to disaggregate the data. I want to leave you with this quote. I'm not done, but I want to leave you with this quote as a way to deal with my fat problem. Equity without a root cause analysis is like me trying to diet my way out of a fat problem. So now, if you don't mind writing this for later reflection, what are my takeaways from this immunity change path? I will tell you this. My marriage was never in jeopardy, but the moment I learned the immunity to change tool, my wife loved me even more. Because she saw the root cause analysis of my problems. And every goal that I have in my entire life goes through that map. I did not come to waste your time to bring you the tools that don't work. You can Google the tool, it's easy to find, it's free, it's called the Immunity to Change Map. But it's about getting to those dreaded images and getting to those hidden commitments that get in the way of justice. Equity is not where we want to get to. Equity is a tool to get to justice for all. And tools matter, y'all. So immunity to change is just one tool, but I want to share with you more. I started doing your homework because I love y'all, and I looked at your entire equity plan, and I began to start to put it through the way they grade students in Oakland. Can you believe in Oakland, they say kids are minimal? I hope you don't do that. We do that in Oakland. It's horrible. And then they say, you're approaching. Man, that sucks, because you never get to the concert if you just approach it. Sucks. Some of us meet it, and very few exceed. So I began to look at every single thing you wrote in that policy document, and I can't wait to work with y'all so that we can study it and visit it and analyze it. Because some of you wrote to me and you said, we talk equity, we want to make that good progress. Now, I want to pivot a little bit, and it might feel like I'm coming out of left field, but I want to talk about ants for a little bit. Has anybody ever heard of automatic negative thoughts? I hate them. This is a psychological tool, and there's 9 types of ants that I want you to look up, and there's a beautiful book that you can read to your kindergartners about ants. But there's all these automatic negative thoughts that come when this presentation of what's happening, when you think about change, when you think about what could be. There's the doubter, there's the one that can foretell the future, there's the one that's never going to change, and we get 80,000 automatic negative thoughts in our brain every day, according to science. Y'all must be real badassery, sociologists, because how do you deal with all that negative talk and still move forward? And how are we teaching kids to deal with ants? Because ants get in the way of our social justice work. So we have to decolonize our thoughts, especially if we've learned hopelessness. The second thing is, you all come from great wisdom, from ancestors who are phenomenal. So please learn your grandmother's name from 7 generations ago. Get excited about your family tree. Even if you find stuff that you're not proud, not everybody was like that, because no 2 people are alike. Even the twins at your house are not the same. Even your 2 kids are not the same. So get excited about your roots. And the next thing is, we get to unlock not only self-love, but love of the truth, because we always know from all of our spiritual studies that the truth shall set us free. Now, some of you are not believers in God. That's okay, it's a public school, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But all of us are believers in the sun, the moon, and the stars, because we know their power, and we know no humans can control them. And the sun, moon, and stars have such a powerful energy. How many women really understand the moon, are in deep alignment with the moon? So I got to come hang out with this crew over here. They understand the power of the moon and the moon cycle and cycles of life, right? And so some people align themselves with a moon calendar, or with not an agrarian calendar to do school 180 days a year. But there are, like trees, they have their seasons, and there's a season to produce fruit and to go harder in school, and seasons to retreat. So there's a lot to align ourselves with. But ultimately, what I'm saying about the sun, moon, and stars is that there's an energy more powerful than us that we can go to in alignment. And if you need any support, you got 3 ferocious warriors over here that understand moon energy. Some of you understand the Great Spirit, and you've given it many names: Allah, Buddha, Jesus Christ, Quetzalcoatl, and that energy that's out there. Some of you know the power of prayer, or the power of channeling your ancestors. Some of you do a good job of decolonizing your body in all of its forms. Some of you understand the power of exercise to release trapped energy, because you read the book, My Body Keeps the Score. And if you have it, you're going to read it. My body keeps the score. And when you free your body of trauma, what else is left? Some of you have decolonized your food. I grew up on a McDonald's diet where my mother couldn't afford to eat, so she got me a Happy Meal when we came to the States, and her and grandma shared a cup of coffee. And I grew up on McDonald's, but I didn't know I was colonized. I didn't know I could now go to this fancy shop called Cafe with a K, and they gave me almond milk, and that doesn't have all the chemicals that the other milk does. I didn't know. They told me milk was good for me, but I didn't know they pump it with hella milk, with the chemicals. Got me trapped. So almond is saving me. How many of y'all are almond revolutionaries? I see y'all preaching to the choir. Now I want to take you to elementary school, and this is our 8-year-old daughter. And this is what it sounds like, not when doves cry, but when kids have audacious hope. This is her at the house rehearsing. She got a little mad I filmed her, but this is her rehearsing before she has to go to school and drop it.
Hey, you Latino, yes, you, who they call Spanish, Hispanic, Mexican, you, and they yell at to go home. Tell them who you really are. Hey, you Latino, tell them you are the air, land, water, and fire. These words flow from your mother earth, the warmth on your face from Father Sun. Hey, you Latino, tell them to pronounce your name correctly. No, it's not Leticia, it's Leticia. No, it's not Alexander, it's Alejandro. Hey, you Latino, tell them that your ancestors built the great pyramids of Teotihuacan, the mathematical concept of zero. It came from our people, our raza, the Incas, Mayas, Aztecas, and Boricuas, second to none. Hey, you Latino, you're the people of the corn, the spice, you're the people of the moon, the sun, y las estrellas. You're the people of the past, the present, y el futuro. Hey, you Latino, eres de colores, you are of colors. Cantas de la madrugada, and you sing at the daybreak. Tantas posibilidades, so many possibilities. Hey, you Latino, tell them to step off as because this is our land. Nuestra tierra, brown by choice, proud to be la raza.
Now she's 10. I bet she got issues. But that's the power. She goes to a school like yours and she's mirrored. And she's not scarred. There's no scars to her beautiful. But if there were, they'd heal. And she has amazing educators who really understand what's possible when we raise the next generation. So I want to close by trying something. If you're like me and you always hated to meditate, I'm with you. I'm going to lead you on a guided meditation that can just be useful of allowing yourself to breathe. So if you question these things, question it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you allow yourself, I'm just going to sort of ask you some questions and have some thinking time. And you know that you have a part of your brain called the amygdala. And that's the part of your brain that fears things, that wants to fight things, or wants to freeze. It's the part of your brain that protects you. But when you send deep oxygen to your brain, you relax it. So when you see a kid that's hyphy, a kid that's going through it, a kid that's really like stressed out and balled up, they're carrying their stresses and trauma, you know, let's take some deep breaths. Let's be what they call mindful now. But we've been deep breathing all of our lives, we just haven't always been in tune to it. So what this could be useful for in the next 5 minutes is just your deep breathing. It would be better if you don't look at me. It would be better if you don't look around. If you ever feel safe enough, then you close your eyes. And if you don't, just kind of lower your gaze, maybe notice the redness in the beauty of this carpet. And I'm going to walk you through these questions. I'm going to ask you about ropes. I'm going to ask you what you need. We haven't started yet, by the way. I'm going to ask you to invite an ancestor to come in. And you might not have a chosen ancestor, so you might not have a grandma that's ready to visit, but you might really be in love with Dr. King. So invite Dr. King to come visit you, and what would Dr. King say to you during these times, and allow Dr. King to speak. Then I'm going to ask you about all the medicine that you carry, the hope, the wisdom, your ancestors, your grandparents, your resiliency. You're always finding a way out of no way. I'm going to ask you about your sacred purpose, because you're not just meant to be a teacher or a leader, as awesome as you are. You're probably a sister, a brother, a cousin, an auntie, a parent, a community member, an activist, a freedom fighter. Think about all your sacred purposes, and are you done on this earth? Heck no, we're not done. Think about your awesome warrior for justice self, and then we're going to count some blessings. If any of you have this thing called a bed, I never count it as a blessing. And then I saw my relatives, I was driving from Portland, and I saw my relatives that are living under tents under the freeway, and it made me want to go see my relatives, and it also allowed me to count my blessings. I have this thing called running water, and my relatives who live under bridges never have access to running water. And if they leave their tent, their stuff gets stolen. So we'll close there. Is that cool? All right, y'all. So when you're ready, if you can, if you're able to close your eyes or lower your gaze. And when you're ready, would you please take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. I want you to think about anything that may be a rope or a challenge in your life or a stressor in your life. For the next 30 seconds or so, just think about the stressors in your life that get in the way of your greatness or the greatness of your students. Think about those ropes that may exist and name those really quietly to yourself right now. Ready? Take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. What do you need to be complete? What do you need to have joy? What do you need to have hope? Ask whatever energy you believe in. It could be yourself. It could be Great Spirit. It could be your God. It could be your ancestors. No judgment here. Whatever you believe in, what do you need for these difficult times? Ask for what you need, and please do so right now. Ready? Please take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. If this is feeling like a waste of time, it's okay if it is. Just give yourself the sacred time to just focus on your breathing. If your thoughts are wandering, you're hungry, you're worried about your kids, you have another meeting to go to after this, you're worried about things, it's okay. Be gentle with your mind and say, thank you, mind, for reminding me of that, and bring it back to this moment. Would you think about some ancestors? It could be a relative, it could be a loved one, it could be a former student, maybe someone that has passed or a historical figure. Invite them to come visit you right now at Forest Grove. Let them come with you, and it might be a few of them. They notice your pain and they notice your strengths. They see how amazing you are and they see your worries. Would you allow them to pour into you and let them speak to you? What message do the ancestors want to send? Please let them speak to you right now. Ready? Please take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. You all carry medicine. We don't mean Tylenol. We mean the wisdom of your parents, of your grandparents, of your great-grandparents. You know how to take care of your ear infection. You know what teas to make, and you carry so much wisdom. Would you think about all the wisdom that you carry, all the hope that's been given, all the advice and knowledge that's been given to you? And would you channel some of that wisdom? Remind yourself of the wisdom that you carry. Please do so now. Ready? Take a deep breath in and hold. Breathe out. All of you have so many purposes. Maybe you're meant to dance, to sing, to do art, to be educators, to be teachers, to be parents, to be partners, to be children, to be light. What kind of future ancestor do you want to be? Think about all your sacred purposes and what legacy and what purpose, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? Please name that for yourselves right now. Ready? Please take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. As a warrior for justice, as someone who believes in equity, as someone who wants to see a better world, a beautiful world, what kind of world do you want to see? What kind of love do you want to manifest? What kind of light do you want to bring? And what do you need to get there? Maybe you need to speak out more or write more love letters to yourself and to your staff and to other people. What do you need to be that amazing warrior for the light and warrior for justice? Name what you need to be more of that right now. Ready? Take a deep breath in and hold it. Breathe out. As you think about your blessings, your ability to breathe, your limbs, your eyes, your ears, would you count them? Would you count your blessings? Please go ahead and take a moment right now to count all of your blessings. Ready, take a deep breath in and hold. Slowly start to come to a close. Thank yourself for giving yourself an opportunity to breathe, to reflect, to remember, to remind yourself. May you be gentle with yourself. May you be kind to yourself. May you heal yourself. May you cut all those ropes and may you analyze those ropes. And may you be your brother, your sisters, and your community's keeper in that good way. May you love thy neighbor as thyself. And as you begin to open your eyes, and as you begin to raise your gaze, may you always show love to yourself. And if you're able to, may you show love to someone else. As we come back, I wanted to leave you with a gift. So I'm going to pass these out. And don't take a look at them just yet. Remember those elephants that came in earlier that were trained since birth to learn hopelessness. We are those elephants meant to be free. And so it's been the honor of my life to be here with you. Like I told you, I don't know that I have tomorrow promise. I really despise getting on planes. And I don't mean the way other people despise getting on planes. I mean, I have anxiety attacks. We were in Florida and I couldn't get on, so we had to drive across country. And we left our kids behind. And that was scary. And so it was really hard for me to get on that plane. The reason I got on that plane was Father called and he told me what y'all are trying to do. And I look forward to the anxiety tomorrow and the prayer and the belief and the hope that my anxieties and my claustrophobia do not get the best of them. That the Alaska airline workers that are sort of on strike and we're on an Alaska flight, that we're able to fly so that we can return to our kids. But it really has been the honor of my life. I don't normally leave my cell phone number. That's my cell phone number. I'm not so good on the email. I would love to connect with you. If we had a moment, I hate when they ask me this question. So now I'm going to ask the question I hate. If you could think of one word of how you're feeling, we're going to do the quickest whip around ever, and then I'm going to pass it back to the team because I've taken up a lot of your time and space. But one word of how you're feeling at this moment, we'll do the quickest whip around. We'll start here, and then we'll go through, and then please don't share it with me, but if you start, you might want to share it to the back of that room so that we see each other, if that makes sense. So We'll start off with you and we'll whip around.
Hopeful.
Appreciate it.
Center.
Bold.
Great.
Cambio.
We'll come here to Osvaldo, then we'll look around this. Probably because I cannot do it one way. So I'm gonna pass.
Okay, I like that, I like that. Lynn.
Present.
Inspired.
Recharge. Center. Including.
Crossroads. Reflect.
Inspire.
Take a direction.
Reflect. Center. Grateful. Curious. Ready. Valid.
Fire it up!
Hey, as the pros are, thank you for that. Oh, we missed some. Oh, sorry.
Inspired.
Did we miss anyone else? I hate when they leave me with more questions than answers. In that spirit, I left you with 21 questions. And I hope in our journey together, I hope to be able to come back and get to build with y'all. But I left you 21 questions as a humble offering and a gift for the school district to reflect on. And so please take those with a lot of love and a lot of great salt, and may they be useful on your journey. Thank y'all so much.
Really quick, all the documents that Dr. Cruz shared with you, they are attached to the agenda. So you have a digital component there already. It's just not delay. First of all, let's once again appreciate food is there, so please enjoy lunch and then try to get into your teams, because it is important that you have a little bit of time to kind of discuss strategy, take a look at the vision, have some conversations as a team. And then, oh, by the way, we have some books, so.
Well, we have books, but we also have a process for your, once you get your lunch, eat your lunch, enjoy your lunch, but also Joelle and I will pass around with some poster paper and markers. It's non-digitally. So just, there's a couple of questions on the poster paper for each table. Just kind of work on those. And if the questions don't work for you, if you want to use our recruitment questions, use those. But as a scaffold, if that's helpful.
I believe that is in the agenda. We'll find the agenda. So let me go ahead and share the agenda with you one more time. So that you have it. If you don't have it.